Hi there, everybody, and welcome to The Real Story. I'm Martha McCallum, in for Gretchen Carlson. So are things starting to heat up a little bit on this shutdown issue in Washington? We're now learning that Senate Democrats may take a vote to raise the debt ceiling. The president is urging them to get on with it. Remember that October the 17th, which is 10 days from now, is when the Treasury's warning that America could run out of money to pay its bills and possibly default for the first time ever, although there's a lot of skepticism that that would actually happen on that day. Here's the president just a short time ago speaking with FEMA workers.
I'm happy to talk to Republicans about anything related to the budget. There's not a subject that I am not willing to engage in, work on, negotiate, and come up with common sense compromises on. What I've said is that I cannot do that under the threat that if Republicans don't get 100% of their way, they're going to either shut down the government or they are going to default on America's debt.
So what does that mean? We're going to read between the tea leaves a little bit here. We've got a fair and balanced debate with Julie Roginski, former political advisor to late Senator Frank Lautenberg and a Fox News contributor, and Lars Larson, syndicated radio host. Hello there, folks. Welcome. Good to have you here today.
Great to see you.
Good to see you both. So, Julie, it sounds like the president is willing to talk now. Is he?
Well, you know, I think he's willing to talk, provided that this gun isn't held to his head. Look, this is a bad precedent that Congress is setting, regardless of who the president is. If this were George Bush, I'd say the same thing. You can't hold the full faith and credit of the United States hostage over policy. Let's get this debt limit raised. Let's get this shutdown over with, and then sit down and hammer things out, and stop holding the people hostage.
Yeah, but that's not going to happen, Julie, because we all know what happens, right? I mean, if you say you can't have it both ways, the president says let's just pass the CR, let's pass the debt ceiling thing, and then I would be more than happy to sit down and talk to you about spending reductions and tax reform, for example.
Except don't forget, he's already compromised, as have the Democrats. The CR that they're proposing is at sequester levels. That is anathema.
Well, you know what? We didn't hear that much last week, but that definitely is the line of the day.
That's true. I wrote that last week.
They're saying, Julie did, and we are starting to hear about it, but that's sort of where this is headed right now, Lars. Well, you've already got the sequester levels. We're done.
No, we're not done. And you know what's ironic about this? The president seems to understand it when his buddies in the unions threaten to shut a company down if the company doesn't accede to the demands of the unions. And that's the only kind of pressure that seems to work with this president. He's always willing to negotiate as long as you take the gun away. Well, whatever metaphor you want to use for it, this doesn't seem reasonable. The president says start the government back up again, raise the debt ceiling so we've got another year, 1 year of borrowing authority. We'll go to, what, almost $18 trillion in total debt, and then I'll sit down and negotiate after you have no leverage. That doesn't make any sense. What kind of fool would fall for that kind of deal? Thankfully, in this case, I think the Republicans are not going to fall for that kind of crazy deal.
You know, we've seen a long history, Julie, of negotiating over the debt ceiling. You know, the president says, absolutely not. We cannot bring this issue of the full faith and credit of the American ability to pay its bills. And yet, you know, Reagan negotiated, George Bush negotiated. We got Graham Rudman out of one of those negotiations. We got raised taxes out of the first President Bush, which, you know, basically sunk his second election. So this kind of negotiating goes on all the time.
Well, first of all, I don't think it's those people were negotiating over debt ceiling. The only time you really had negotiations was the last time the Republicans pulled this, and I think Obama made a huge mistake, not just for his presidency, but going forward, establishing a pattern that the debt ceiling is something to negotiate over. To Lars's point, this is debt that the Congress has already voted to appropriate. This isn't new debt. This is debt that the Republican House and the Democratic Senate have already passed. And so they're negotiating over something right now, or holding something hostage right now that they've already voted for. So that's even more ridiculous to me.
So, Lars, that's the argument that, you know, we've already voted on this spending, so everything else should be off the table: spending cuts, tax reform, other ways that we could lower the overall price tag while we pay the bills.
I would beg to differ, because this is a government that's been running during Obama's presidency, and uniquely so, without a budget for the past 4.5 years. They don't have a budget. And the Republicans are saying we'll offer up appropriations packages the way the government used to be passed. You remember that we used to budget that way. There were appropriations packages, and yet the president calls that piecemeal and says we can't do it again. That's the good old-fashioned way we used to do it.
So, for consideration and decide whether or not it's the way we want to. I'm going to stop you guys there, because I want to move on to the health care issue, because I want to get your thoughts on this as well. Let's start with this piece of sound from over the weekend from Jack Lew on health care.
How many actually signed up, sir? You know, they have 6 months to sign up. This is a big decision. We never expect.
How many signed up?
I don't have the exact number, but the question isn't
Do you
how
have
many.
any number? Because the government has refused to tell us how many.
It's a wrong question.
No, it isn't.
It's the wrong
That's
question.
the scary question right now that nobody wants to answer, and it seems like it ought to be fairly simple. It's a, you know, it's a system that it should be quantifiable. Julie, how many people so far have signed up? What's the big deal?
Well, the big deal, I guess, is that people are comparison shopping right now until they figure out what plan they want to buy. The reason you've had all these glitches, and there have been glitches with the system, the computer system in all the different states, is they've been overwhelmed by the high demand of people who actually are shopping online to try to get health care. And that actually speaks to exactly what the Republicans don't want to hear. They don't want to hear that there's a desperate need for health care, that people are overwhelming these servers to try to get health care. And so at the end of the day, more people are going to be insured because there's a desperate clamor to get coverage.
All right, so
and
Lars, they're
that's
saying
the
that
answer.
it is so popular that the system is jammed. That's good news, right? If you're selling a product and the system goes, the website goes down, woohoo, right?
I think it's baloney. She's trying to suggest this is like Walmart on the day after Thanksgiving. Far from it. Most of the reaction I'm getting from my audience on radio, they write in with specific comparisons. This is what I used to have up till this year with this premium and these deductibles. Now they're telling me it's going to be 2 or 3 times as much higher deductibles. People are going to the website for certain, and they're not finding anything that's comparable to what they have now, which is what the president promised. Further, they've got a problem with the software that they spent $1.4 billion on with a Canadian company, which was apparently badly designed. And in a lot of the states, the state I'm sitting in right now, Oregon, they admitted weeks ago that their exchange wouldn't even be up and operating until sometime in mid-October to late October. This thing is a colossal disaster, which is usually what happens when you put the government in charge of something
Julie,
like
do you
this.
think are you concerned about that? You know, because you would think if the White House wasn't concerned about it, they would be able to say, look, we had this many signups so far. We've got this many in the pipeline. We're working out the issues, and we feel good about it. Why does that have to be a mysterious issue?
Here's why I'm not concerned, but here's why I believe Republicans are. You know, if the Republicans really wanted to destroy the Democratic Party, they'd let this disaster they keep claiming is happening just unfold, and you guys would win elections next year. You'd repeal Obamacare. The whole thing would be gone in a heartbeat. But you guys aren't doing that. You're trying to stop it and strangle it before it takes off because you're afraid it's going to be a success. I know it's going to be a success after these glitches are done. So you can't speak out of both sides of your mouth, Lars. On the one hand, if you want to repeal this thing, let it happen. Let it happen. Let this go live. Let people go out there. Let people, let this system fail, and then you guys can take the House and the Senate back and repeal it. But you know that's not going to happen, and that's at the end of the day why they're trying to kill it today.
We're going to have to leave it there. Lars, thank you very much. Julie,
thank you, Martha.
always good to see you both.
Julie.
So I know that's got you thinking, listening to both of them talking. So we want to hear what you think at this point about Obamacare. Have you tried to sign up? Were you able to get onto the website? What did you think about the cost, the comparisons out there? Email The Real Story at foxnews.com, or you can send me a tweet at Martha MacCallum. We'll talk about it. We'll take a look at what you're saying and see how you feel about it so far, because that's the big question. What does everybody in America think about this plan so far?